Okay, there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first. I'm not sure what the name of our show is called yet, but we'll just call it that cruise show for right now. Um, we just, all of us miss cruising so much that we just wanted to talk about cruising. And if we can help the cruise industry in any way, we want to do that. Or if there's any of you guys out there that have never cruised before and want to know more, feel free to jump in, text us, and we can talk about whatever you want. Today, we're just going to be talking about different things that have happened since COVID started and what changes are happening, and different things that we like and things that we think the cruise lines need to improve on as well. Today, we have James Hills from cruisewestcoast.com. He also is man tripping and blogs a lot about cruising. And then we have Ashley. Oh God, Ashley, now I'm going to screw up your last name. Say it for me.
Kashulik.
Kashulik. And she's been in the cruise industry for 12 years. Um, I'm glad we have everyone here. You know, and Flow Voyages is my travel agency that I've started out after travel blogging for so long. And I love it, except for right now. Everybody's canceling or rebooking, so it's a little bit stressful, I will say that. Um, let's start with Ashley. Ashley, actually, let me back up. I want to tell you how many cruises each one of us has been on and then the total, so you can see that we know a lot about cruising. Ashley has been on um, 42 cruises.
Oh my goodness, Ashley.
Yes. And that equals 235 days, almost a year. Boy, I would love to be on a cruise for that long. I've been on 21, 105 days. James is 22 with 110 days. So total, we've been on 85 cruises if you put it all together, and 345 cruise days. So just a little bit about us. You can see we cruise a lot. And Ashley started 12 years ago, right? And then
Yes.
we started 9 years ago. So all that cruises within 12 years. So great.
And I actually had my first cruise back in the 90s, but we can't remember the exact ship. It was either Windward or Seaward. And my dad, bless his heart, was like, "Oh well, let me go look at my checkbook and see if I." I'm like, "Dad, you literally have check registers still on your, easily accessible from 30 years ago," but apparently he did, but it didn't actually say the name of the ship. So
I can't believe he still had that from 30 years ago.
But either way, the cruise industry has come a long way since then. To be honest, I was not a fan of the cruise industry the first time, we actually Heather and I were both kind of struggling with the fact that it's like, the cruise is just boring. It's just being trapped on a boat for a week with people that you don't care about. And luckily we listened to some of our friends and decided, hey, you know what? How can I pass up? I think we paid. What did we pay for that first Carnival trip on Victory? It was like $700 or something like that for a week.
For a balcony.
For balcony. We're like, you know what? How can I possibly pass it up? For God's sake, the plane tickets cost almost that much. But since then, we've been completely hooked, and I'm glad. So for all of you guys that say you don't want to cruise, I don't blame you. But just listen to a friend, check it out, because you really can't be beat.
Well, so then, James, since we're still on you, what's your favorite part of cruising?
I would say I really like the buffets. I like the fact that the food is so easily accessible, but that seems almost trivial because that's something that you can get that in all inclusive too. So I think the thing I love most about cruising is ultimately the fact that you're on a ship and you can see tons of destinations. So like that trip we did to the Southern Caribbean or Western Caribbean or whatever the heck it was. You know, yeah, I could
Eastern.
spend I could spend $3,000, $4,000 per person for a week on it all inclusive, and we can get unlimited alcohol and all that kind of stuff. But we couldn't decide which island we wanted to go to. So instead of saying I'm going to go to Barbados or go to, wherever, we saw them all. We went to we sailed out of San Juan, and then we went to Virgin Islands. We went to I'm blanking on the name of it with
St.
the
Lucia.
Tetons, St. Lucia, and we went to Barbados. And I mean, memories like that are just amazing. We did the same kind of thing with Hawaii, where we went to the Big Island for your birthday, and then a month later, Norwegian is like,
That's where we
hey,
met Ashley.
you want to go to Hawaii? Let's go to Hawaii. And the first time the week we were there on our own, everyone's like, oh, so you're going to go to Oahu? And I'm like, no, because Oahu's like a 3 hour or 2 hour plane trip away. But on a cruise, it's all in one week, and that's one of the things I absolutely love.
How about you, Ashley?
Um, I agree with James wholeheartedly. I think it's cruising is a great way to see a lot of places at once and to do it more affordably than if you were to plan separate trips to each of those places individually. Some people will say that that's not, you're more of a tourist than a traveler at that point. But I think even if that's your mindset, cruising is still a great way for people to test things out and see where they might want to return on a land-based trip for a longer stay. And it really is, for me, there's something about water that's very calming, and just being near it, being around it, the sound of it while you're sailing, being out on deck with the breezes. It's a nice way to get away, I think. And talking about first cruises, mine was Majesty of the Seas, Royal Caribbean. A friend and I booked it at the very last minute for college spring break, and it was so dirt cheap that our flights were actually more expensive. And what's ironic is when I started working in the industry, my first assignment was on Oasis of the Seas. So I went from sailing Royal Caribbean's smallest ship to what at the time was their largest ship. And it really kind of...
Uh-oh. Well, it looks like the internet gremlins have
ship is
attacked.
Huge. It's amazing. There's so much going on. And then to get on Oasis was like, okay, I really, had no idea how big some of these ships are.
Oasis is a pretty good ship. Like I'm partial to the fantasy class ships. I'm really sad that probably the fantasy class ships are going to be on the chopping block. But I was actually pretty impressed by the Oasis class for a ship that's like 6,000 people. They did a really good job of dividing it up so it doesn't feel like it's 6,000 people.
Yeah.
See,
Definitely.
you felt that way. I still felt like it was too big. I'm just not a mega ship girl, but everybody's got their likes and dislikes. I love the water show on it.
That was cool. Well, all things being
excellent.
equal, we'd all be on a 900 passenger Viking ship or Crystal instead.
Yeah, there really is something for everybody.
I know that's part of the thing that I love about cruising is that, there is something for everybody. If you want to bring your whole family on board, you don't have to do the exact same things. You can split up and meet together for meals or whatever. I like that. Originally, we started cruising so that we could get away from the internet.
That worked real well.
We needed a place to go where we weren't online all the time. Then, you see how that happens. It didn't work out very well. Then we're tweeting on board every ship and everything else. So, but I do enjoy the water. I love being out there. It's amazing. Yeah. Now, what was the last cruise you were on, Ashley?
My last cruise was the International Women's Day sailing on Celebrity Edge, which was phenomenal. And I feel terrible because I don't think it ended. I forget the exact date. I believe it was like March 10th, somewhere around there. So it was right before industry shut down. And it was a heck of a last sailing for me to go out on for the time being because it was very powerful. They did it really well, but I think it was kind of overshadowed by the pandemic stuff. But the ship was amazing. Captain Kate was at the helm and she's phenomenal. They had an all-female bridge crew for the first time in their history. They dubbed themselves the Ocean's 27. I mean, there weren't 27 women in the bridge, but the heads of all the major departments were female. They had a lot of Q&A panels. It was really powerful stuff. Very cool sailing.
I see her Instagram and her cat.
Bug Naked, yes. I did a Q&A interview with Bug Naked. Captain Kate had to translate, obviously.
Is it Captain Kate or Captain Kate on Instagram, or what is it?
Captain Kate McHugh, I believe, is her
That
handle.
makes it difficult to look up. Like Captain Kate's easy to spell. So for those of you who are wondering why I'm typing now, we do
Let me
have
see
the
if I can
ability.
find it. Yeah, she's
Captain Kate McHugh. Okay, I got her.
you got her.
Well, I know our last cruise, James and I were on Norwegian Sky
So
for
this
Thanksgiving, right after the inaugural for the Bliss. There she is.
There's
the cat.
That's a cat? Wow, that's a little...
What did you say the cat's name is?
Her name is Bug Naked. She's adorable. She has all kinds of costumes and stuff. She has a little mermaid outfit.
I still can't get over the paper straw. I've just decided I'd rather have my drink without the straw, but I'm glad that everybody is environmentally conscious.
Oh, those Carnival straws are horrible.
The sugar ones?
Yes.
They're okay for the first 5 minutes, and then they kind of start to warp, and then they fall apart because they dissolve. I love that you can eat them, though, when you're done.
I was drinking out of one, and it started to dissolve, and as I was taking a sip, it went back further, and I almost choked. Leave it to me to choke on the straw. But I'm like, these are, I don't know. I think they start tasting really nasty right away, I think.
We did a lot of research on the Panorama launch in November. I feel bad. Like we have so much content from events that happened in November, December, and January that just got completely buried and completely irrelevant now. Like all that awesome stuff with Viking that came out. I mean, Viking had the Mississippi. Viking had the expedition ships that came out in January, or that they announced in January. And now, I mean,
everything's delayed.
That's what I'm really sad about. We were on the 15-day Danube on Viking. We were supposed to be March 12th or May 12th.
Budapest to Amsterdam.
But anyhow, that sounds like a great itinerary. But apparently Europe is starting to resume, and hopefully, I mean, Americans aren't allowed there right now, apparently, but it's something you guys can do in the future, hopefully.
Oh yeah, they will be back, and that's the thing that, if I was, and you're younger than we are, I don't know how young. I'm not going to ask a lady how old she is.
Yeah, you don't do that.
But I see a lot of 20-year-olds freaking out about, oh my God, the bars are shut down. Well, no, the bars are shut down for at most a year. Like I understand if you're 20 years old, or some of these even younger kids are freaking out too. I can't see my friends. Well, you know what? At this point, as somebody in his 40s, like I've never had this bad, but shit happens. Just suck it up. Look at it as a positive way and try to figure out how to make it through. So, like for instance, Heather has people who are booking on her cruises with her. That half the world's sitting there going, oh, I would never petri dish of the seas, all that kind of stuff, but the reality is, this is a great time, because instead of sitting there saying I need to save up, $1,000 or $2,000 for a cruise in Thanksgiving, well, now you have a year to save up, so put away $50, $100 a month, and look at things like that. Look at things like if you want to get into that perfect cruise, bathing suit or perfect cruise tuxedo for formal night, now's the time to actually focus on losing some weight, getting better in shape. And so it's going to be that much more fun, 8 months from now, 10 months from now. And I know saying 8, 10, 12 months from now is heresy within the cruise line, elite that's saying, October. Well, the cruises are not going to start in October, as far as I'm concerned. And I know, Heather, I'm jumping ahead on your itinerary of questions, but
Yes. I was going to say a lot of what is going on is because they're trying to space out the refunds. It's a lot of work for them, or the future cruise credit. I wasn't the most happy. I love Norwegian, but I wasn't the most happy about how Alaska's was handled. We all knew it was going to end because Alaska said no one's coming here. So did Canada. So we waited and waited, and a couple weeks ago we finally got notification for some of my clients that Alaska is not happening. So they're rebooking for next year, thank goodness. But Carnival says they're going to start. Everyone says they're going to start in September, but Carnival says they're going to start in October to give them some practice time. Are you there? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's weird, something weird with the headphones. But I don't know. Do you think it's... Ooh, that was really loud. Sorry. Do you think it's going to happen or not? I'm asking all you guys. And when do you think you would feel comfortable cruising again?
I don't think we're going to see cruises until at the earliest, early 2021. I was trying to be optimistic, but I think instead I'm going to have to be realistic. As far as feeling comfortable, I actually was booked on 2 sailings, one of which was Carnival Breeze on August 1st. So it was initially scheduled to be one of the first sailings back before they pushed the dates back again. So that cruise has since been canceled. But I am still booked, oddly enough, on the July 24th, I believe it is, or July 25th sailing of Bahamas Paradise Cruise Lines. I think it's Grand Celebration.
Okay.
And they are not part of CLIA, so they are not under that blanket, we're pushing back until September or October. And I still have not received notification that they are canceling the sailing. So I am highly skeptical that it's going to happen, but I would be comfortable going, assuming that they take precautions. I don't know what those precautions look like necessarily, but I do think it's important to note that when they do come back, they're going to be under a very, under a microscope. Everyone's going to be watching to see what happens. And if there are outbreaks, I think it could really set the industry back even further. So
it's such a shame that you hear that all the time. Oh, cruise ship is a petri dish. Because honestly, it's very clean. You're just in a confined space. You would get that anywhere. You get it on planes. Planes are dirty. Cruise ships, you always see somebody cleaning. Somebody's cleaning their room every day. And I did a webinar with Virgin Cruise Line, Virgin Voyages, I should say. And all the stuff they're doing, it's crazy. They're going to be taking your temperature when you get on, random temperature checks in the atrium or outside. And then they're using one of those new fog machines in everybody's room every day as well. So they got it down. And I know Carnival's going to do the same thing in Norwegian with the whatever the gun is, you know what I'm talking about, the fog machine. So, but what about you, James?
I think you're going to see some small ships and some. Like honestly, I think Paradise is it Paradise Cruise Lines? Is that the name of it? The one you just mentioned. I think places like that are probably safe because the ships aren't that big. It's not like you have 2,000, 3,000 people, and for the most part, if something happens, you're a day's sailing from Miami, and I think things like that are probably relatively safe. But I think as far as the full-on cruise industry as it is, I don't see any way that it's going to start without having a significant number of people with the vaccine. That being said, I believe that it is probably one of the safer places to go. I would much rather be on a cruise ship than at a Vegas casino resort. With all deference to Vegas, I absolutely love Vegas, and I know they are working their butts off to be as safe as they possibly can. But the reality is, you put 2,000, 3,000 people into an area, no matter how much regulation you have and how much guidance, how many signs you have, people are just going to be stupid. And people that are drinking are even more stupid than people who are sober. So it wouldn't surprise me if there is cruising, but I wouldn't personally want to do that. I'd rather save up, instead of spending $600 or $700 right now getting an inside cabin on Golden, whatever it is, or something Princess on the West Coast. I would rather just save up an extra couple $100 per person and have a really awesome cruise for spring next year. And I think that's just the better way to go.
Definitely.
I think it's also going to depend on what the CDC decides, because right now their guidelines, which basically say, hey, don't sail right now, go through July 24th. As far as I know, they have not extended them. Mm-hmm. And under those guidelines, they are not allowing, if the cruise ship takes U.S. passengers out to the Bahamas, which is where Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line sails to, and then brings them back, they're not allowed to disembark. Like, basically, a cruise ship is not allowed to go to another country and then come back to port in the U.S. as of right now. So if the CDC doesn't lift those guidelines or alter them in some way, I don't see that sailing happening.
I would think it's also really irresponsible for the Bahamian government to allow Americans from Florida and Texas to go there right now, considering the level of infection that both those states have. Because we have our own troubles with our own health systems, but honestly, the Bahamian government is even worse on public health than we are.
It's really hard right now because, being a travel advisor, travel agent, whatever you want to call us, the term is travel advisor. There's so many people that want to go somewhere. They're just sick of being pent up. And there's a lot of people going to the Caribbean because places like Jamaica are, open, and they're begging us to book people at all-inclusives. They're like, come on in, do this, do that. And it's great. Like you said, James, I worry about, when you're on such a little island like that, yes, they're taking your temperature when you get off the plane, then they're taking your temperature again at customs, and then they're taking you somewhere else, and then you're only allowed to be at your resort. You have to stay at your resort for 2 days before you're allowed to go off and venture. But still, I don't know. That's 2 days, the checks. You may not have a fever and be sick and still be sick. So I don't know. I feel bad for them. I know a lot of these countries depend on our tourism dollars. People don't realize it, but tourism throughout the whole world is the number one business. Things are pretty bad in the U.S. because of tourism, lack of tourism dollars too. CBDs have laid off all their employees and have kept maybe 2 people because they're not getting the hotel revenue taxes that they used to. So there's a lot of factors going into it. But
yeah, have you guys heard about bubble cruising?
Is that kind of how Australia to New Zealand to Papeete or whatever?
Yeah, and then Norway. It's where cruising is sort of expected to resume. I dialed into a panel of other cruise experts a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about this, and they'll resume sailings, but just in one geographic area. So if they're doing it in Norway right now, for example, so if you're from Norway, you can go on these cruises, but they just do the Norwegian coast or around that general area. I think they're looking to do it in the UK as well. And also there's some talk, I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but that some of the major lines will do sailings just to the private islands, most of which are in the Bahamas. But the thing there is that they're not inhabited. So you have a smaller chance of becoming ill by going there. Another thing, like I was talking before about the CDC guidelines and how you're not allowed to really sail to anywhere out of the U.S., that ships might consider visiting just U.S. territories like Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, how easy? Because Heather and I have talked about that, and I've talked to other people. It seems like you could do a temporary waiver of the PVCA and the Jones Act kind of regulations to allow that. Do you have any insight into how easy that would be to do? Because I think it would be awesome to do a California coastal cruise, for instance.
A wine cruise. That's what I'm working on. When all this happened, I was trying to put together a wine cruise. Yes, it has to stop in Ensenada, but you were going to Santa Barbara, San Francisco, Monterey. So I was putting together a cruise to take everybody on a wine cruise. So I think that's a great option. I mean, do you actually have to get off the ship though? Can you go into the port and say that you're there and then leave? Like, don't let anyone off in Ensenada.
I don't know. I'm a little fuzzy on some of the details, but for anyone who doesn't know, the PVSA is the Passenger Vessel Services Act, and a lot of people confuse it with the Jones Act. The Jones Act, I believe, is more for like merchant marine, like cargo ships, that kind of stuff. And the PVSA it regulates cruise ships, so any ship that carries like passengers for sort of recreation or transportation type purposes. And it basically says that a cruise ship can't sail only U.S. ports. They have to call on at least one foreign port before concluding the sailing. And I believe it is tied to the visas of the crew members working on board, because if a ship only sails around U.S. ports, they've essentially not left the U.S. and they're working in the U.S. And I don't think that their visas are the appropriate visas for that. So there are very few U.S. flagged cruise ships for that reason. One of them being Pride of America, where I met you guys. It does only around Hawaii. There are a few others, but they're not super mainstream lines. So as far as what it would take to overturn that or temporarily suspend it, I would imagine it would be pretty easy to do. I don't know if it's at the top of the government's priority list, but at one time they did allow cruises to nowhere, which technically weren't legal, and then they cracked down on that. So it tells me that they can kind of change their mind at a moment's notice.
They were still doing cruises to nowhere out here. Disneyland was from San Diego. Just like a 2-day, yeah.
Well, when you're charging the rate that charges, they can do whatever the heck they want.
I could be wrong about this too, but I think they might. I shouldn't. Don't quote me on this, but I think they're part of the Walt Disney Company, which is registered in the U.S. So that might be why.
Oh,
but
maybe.
I could be there. I believe their ships are flagged in the Bahamas. But I'm wondering if there's some reason why they were able to do it. I don't know. I'm not an expert in the law, but
because Disney.
Now, James, with everything being shut down and stuff, is there anything that you'd like to see the cruise lines work on during this time, why they have all this time?
I think it's hard to say one thing. I think there's a lot of things that such as technology, such as maybe reforming the buffets. I mean, I absolutely love the buffets, but I think that people like Virgin Voyages, who started from the ground up and said, how can we reimagine a cruise ship? I think they made a lot of mistakes based on. I mean, that honestly, anybody looking at it can say that they made a lot of mistakes on that first cruise, that inaugural cruise right before everything got shut down. But they did a lot of stuff right. And I think I'm really, really intrigued by the concept of, instead of charging like $12 for a can of beer, like, don't offer a beverage package, but charge $5 for it. Charge regular bar prices. The way they did what do they call it? Was it called the galley or whatever they called the essentially the buffet, doing food stations? And I think that, if I recall correctly, I think Mardi Gras is doing a very similar, type situation with having food stations as opposed to kind of the cafeteria style where you walk through with a tray of food and you have, ribs and macaroni and cheese and, then you add some oysters on top of that. But instead of going to into a pasta station or going to a roast beef station, just makes a lot more sense. 'Cause I feel like we overconsume because we walk through the line and then we have this tray full of food that looked really good 5 items ago, and then we say, "Oh my God, there's sushi," and instead of saying, "I'm going to go get sushi," you end up getting just way too much food, and some people eat too much, some people waste too much. But either way, I think that being able to reimagine the food delivery and food offerings on ships is going to be something that I wish they could do, but I don't know that you can really do that on some of these ships that were designed. Like what was that ship had? Was it Mazdam that had an insanely small buffet area? That just, I mean, there's no way you're going to be able to turn that into anything bigger. But some of the other ships like Panorama that are newer, that are more open, like the Breakaway Plus class ships on Norwegian, are open enough that you could break that up into stations. But
I think stations are pretty easy to do. I mean, personally, I find cruising. I'm a germaphobe and I don't freak out when I cruise, but I also bring my own stuff to clean, the room and everything, even though it is clean. I'm not a buffet girl in general. I hate buffets because I hate seeing people go up there and put their hands in things and then eat it. Oh, it just gives me heebie-jeebies and I'll get sick. So I would be happy if the buffet changed, but you know what? He talks about it, but we don't usually eat at the buffet because I don't like it. There's so many other options on the cruise ship, for food, like if you're on Carnival at lunchtime, if you're on one of the ships that has one of the tandoori grills, Indian food is amazing. Or, the wok with gin now or something. I mean, you have options. You have burritos.
Carnival does a really good job with that already. I think Carnival has a good buffet too, but I think Carnival does a really good job at having food options spread across the ship, probably better than many others. I mean, you're not getting fancy stuff, but I mean, having a guy's burger or having a blue iguana, is it blue iguana taco cantina? I think they do a really good job of spreading stuff out like that already. But
I think, I just like sitting down and having someone serve me. I know that sounds sounds kind of bad, but honestly, it's nice to be able to go there and be like, "Oh yes, can you give me that? Thank you very much." Because here I'm doing that, doing it myself. It's vacation. Sit down, have a nice meal.
And maybe that's the easy way to adapt it. I mean, you're not going to be able to send it to dry dock, all like 100 some ships for Carnival Cruise Line. You're not going to be able to send all 100 ships to dry dock and reimagine the buffet. But what you could do, I don't know if you follow, and I swear to God, I'm not necessarily obsessed with buffets as much as I seem to be on this show. I'm just hungry right now. But at the buffet at Wynn, they've stopped having people go up to the walkthrough with your trays and stuff, and instead they have a menu, and they have servers actually delivering the items from the menu for you. So I wonder if cruise lines, like let's say Carnival or other places, spread out on deck and sit at your table and have the waiters, delivering stuff to you, saying, I'd like a guy's burger, and have it come to you. I wonder if that's maybe a easy way that they could adapt and test it out during quarantine. Because honestly, that's a lot better way of doing it. And maybe slap $1 surcharge on there for tip. But I'd rather do that on a good day than waiting in line. I mean, for anybody who's not sailed Carnival, you don't understand. But guys' burgers are really, really good. And so on a good day, you're waiting in line like 10, 15 people deep. And I would rather just sit there with a drink at a private table and have a guy deliver the burger to me. And I'll pay the extra $1 service charge or whatever, $2 service charge, whatever it ends up being to have that service. But it's just better, I think, to reduce transmission too.
Yeah. Now, Ashley, what about? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of buffets, I've been hearing too that they might go more toward not waiter served. Like you would still have to go up to the different stations to get your food, but you would kind of just tell them what you want, and the person behind the counter would put it on your plate instead of having people coming through, touching the food, touching the serving utensils. It would just be one person doing that. I think that could cut down on transmission as well. Holland America already does that on, I don't know if it's all of their ships, but a lot of them. And it initially was to combat norovirus because it incubates over a 48-hour period. So for the first 48 hours of the sailings, they have other people, like the crew members, serving the food to you when you go through the buffet. So that's something that could be easily adopted.
And you know, now think about it, Princess could do that with their Ocean Medallion app too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in terms of what I would like to see, I guess it's less of an onboard thing and more of a like corporate level thing. I would like to see more transparency because I feel like we, both people working in the industry and people who are just, you know, recreational cruisers who want to go on vacation, have sort of been kept in the dark a little bit with what's going on. And I'm certain that the cruise lines are working very hard and very closely with CLIA, which is sort of their, the voice of the major cruise lines. They pay to become members of CLIA, and CLIA kind of liaises with the government and stuff. So I'm sure they're working very diligently with the CDC to come up with, hey, how can we get this ball rolling? But I feel like they haven't said much publicly. And I think it would help to calm some of the nerves and that cruise itch that you just feel like you can't scratch right now. There would at least sort of be an end in sight. And I don't know, even just to say, I know Arnold Donald did some of that not too long ago. He was on the news kind of saying, hey, you know, this is what's going on. But I think something else too that's irritating a lot of people is, like you were saying earlier, it's taking forever for the refunds to be issued.
90 days or more.
Right. But what I think what people know, but what the cruise lines aren't saying is that the cruise lines are taking their sweet time refunding the money because they need a steady flow of cash available.
Exactly.
Because if they were to just snap their fingers, which they have the power to do all the refunds like now, if they wanted to, I'm sure, or at least most of them. But they're drawing it out because they need that cash on hand in order to maintain their operations without ships that are actually sailing. So the longer they take to give that money back, the more it's available to, or the longer it's available to them. And I don't have a problem with that as someone who has a couple cruises booked that were canceled. I just wish they would be upfront about it, because I'd be like, okay, I understand that. It's not just that you're being slow. It's that if I don't want my favorite cruise line to go under, then maybe I need to wait an extra month or two for my refund, and that, you know, that would be okay with me.
Exactly.
I think the cruise industry is I hate the phrase because I don't mean it in a sexist way, but it is an old boys club. And, you know, from the very structural foundations of it, it's very much of a, you know, the board controls stuff in secret, and people on the fringes of it try to do what they do, you know, and that's even on the staff. That's not even touching the public. I mean, that's just, you know, I mean, I think both of us have probably, you know, done interviews or talked to people that work in cruise lines off the record, and, you know, the stuff that they want to do that then is just, you know, cut off because some guy in a boardroom somewhere says, well, that's just not how we've done it before. And I think that, you know, we're seeing that problem now where I have, you know, PR folks that I'm like, hey, I run a live stream. So everybody watching this, I also run a live stream every week on the Menu Blog Virtual Happy Hour. And I've reached out to these guys saying like, hey, you guys have ships, you guys have PR people, like, tell me what's going on so we can, you know, make a cocktail that everybody remembers from, you know, sailing on Norwegian or sailing on Princess or whatever. Oh, we're not going to do PR right now because it's not the appropriate time. And I'm like, now is exactly the appropriate time, because there's tens of thousands of people that are thirsty and hungry for your product, and you can't just hide. You know, I understand there's limitations on stuff, but you know, everyone's trying to figure this out. So I don't want to be too hard on these guys, because the PR folks are really hardworking, and in cases, you know, like, and I'm sure it's actually, you know, I'm not going to single out any of my individual friends, because I'm sure it's like that across the entire board. But there's social media teams and PR teams that 6 months ago had 15, 20 people associated with it that now have 2 or 3. And, you know, and I get it, but, you know, hopefully the cruise industry can look at things across the board and say, how do we fix this? You know, how do we fix transparency? How do we look at IT? How do we look at developing better apps? How do we look at,
Better
improving
back end for travel advisors.
engine technology, back ends on for travel advisors. How do we look at creating itineraries to allow for less environmental disruption? I mean, I love cruising, and I accept the negative impacts of cruising because maybe I'm selfish, maybe I'm that's not a good person, but gosh darn it, like going to Puerto Vallarta and having 6,000 people dropped off or 10,000 people dropped off from different cruise ships is disruptive to an economy. But I think at the same time, there's ways that you can use that experience of exploring a new culture to bring something back and to learn and explore. And I think that Carnival Corporation has done a good job of that with, or started doing a good job of that with. What was the failed cruise line going to Cuba that they Fathom? But once Fathom tanked, they leveraged Fathom to try to incorporate more environmentally conscious, more socially conscious stuff into the overall experience. And I hope that other cruise lines start looking at that as well, because if I sail on a Norwegian ship or on a Carnival ship or whatever ship, I'm going to drink, I'm going to party, I'm going to have a good time because that's what I'm paying to do. But if there's ways that I can go to a port and say like, hey, St. Lucia, not just the pitons, whatever the volcano stuff, but also like, hey, here's some background into the history of how this culture evolved here. I think that there's opportunities they can do there that don't involve reformatting the ship. It just simply involves training the staff. I mean, I think Norwegian Pride of America does an extraordinary job of that with the I can't remember his name, but the Hawaiian cultural ambassador, who's actually a native Hawaiian that is talking about not just stuff that he read in a book somewhere, but his family and his culture, and that kind of stuff. I want to see more of when the cruise lines return.
Exactly. I always used to. Well, I still do, kid, but I haven't been. Last time we were on a northern cruise was Alaska, but I always think it's funny. You're going to Alaska and they're selling Bahama Mamas. You can do a warm drink, or there's tons of drinks out there that you could specialize for going to Alaska or New England. But I always think it's funny. But Ashley, my next question I want to ask you is, if you had someone who's never cruised come up to you and say, why should I cruise? Tell me some good reasons, because I don't feel like it would be a good time and everybody's got germs. Tell me why I should cruise.
I mean, going back to what James and I were saying before, just you can see a lot more for your money. And there are shorter sailings that are just, 3 and 4 days. If you think you might not like it, you could book a shorter sailing and go test it out. They routinely offer really good deals on some of these. So, you haven't lost much if you end up really not liking it. And I do think cruising is one of those things where you either really like it or you really don't. There's very little in between, I think. But as far as, cruise ships being the cliche that everyone's throwing out, all the mainstream media, is petri dish, floating petri dish. And it's just not true. I mean, yes, you have a large group of people together in a confined space. It is the same thing, like you said, Heather, as you'd find on a plane, as you'd find at a shopping mall, as you'd find in a nursing home. Exactly. But the thing is, with a ship, you have people together on board for a long enough period of time that if something happens, you know about it. If someone goes on a flight and they're sick and they spread it to tons of other people, you're not going to know, because they've only been in that environment for a couple of hours as opposed to several days. And the CDC, a lot of people don't know this, but before this whole pandemic thing started, norovirus was the big thing that was pegged as the cruise ship virus. It's something like 97%, and this is a stat from the CDC website. I think it's like 97% of cases, norovirus cases, actually happen in schools, restaurants, nursing homes, hospitals, anywhere where you have people together for a long period of time. The reason you hear about it on cruises more often is because cruise ships are required to report it to the CDC if it is over, I believe it's 2% or 3% of the onboard population. If that percentage or more becomes ill, you have to notify the US before your ship is allowed to call there. And so because they're reporting it, people are hearing about it. Whereas, hospitals, schools, that kind of stuff, they're not required to report. And often, if it's a school or a shopping mall, like I said, you're only there for a brief period of time. So even if it does spread, how do you report that? Because you can't really track it. They have extremely stringent guidelines for cleaning. The CDC runs something called the Vessel Sanitation Program, VSP, where any ship that carries 13 or more passengers and calls on U.S. ports is subject to random, unannounced inspections by VSP officials who are hired by the CDC. They're trained in the cleanliness protocols, and they go on board and they go to the galleys, they go to the restrooms, and they make sure that things are clean the way they're supposed to be, that they're following food safety guidelines, that things are being wiped down at regular intervals. And I think it's either 83 or 85% is considered failing. So, these are really high standards. And people, if you want to know more, people can go to the VSP website and actually get a full report of all of the ships and their latest scores.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's crazy too, because people don't realize how many cruise ships are actually in the world. And then when you hear somebody has neurovirus, you freak out, like, oh, I won't cruise. That's one out of how many ships? You have to put it in perspective.
Yeah, I had an interesting stat. I'm going to see if I can find it, but we can continue with other things in the meantime. I'll just jump in with it if I find it.
Yeah, James. What are you looking forward to once you can cruise again? What are you looking forward to in general?
Right now, to be honest, I'm looking forward to going someplace and just relaxing and not having to worry about anything else. And I would pay money right now just to go have a nice balcony room and sit there and lock myself in and have room service delivered every day, and just sit there and watch the ocean. But on a normal cruise where we don't have to worry about COVID at all, I think the thing I'm most looking forward to is just being able to see new places again. As somebody who, Ashley, you probably cruise or travel as much as I do, but on a normal basis, I go on 2-3 trips a month, and instead, our big trip last weekend was we went 45 minutes up into the mountains and sat under a tree drinking wine and got a horrible sunburn last weekend. But that was our big trip in the last 3 months, and it's put things in perspective. But I think that I'm ready to get out there and start traveling and exploring. I'm not as excited to go to. Yes, if Viking called me up tomorrow and said, "Hey, we're going to schedule you for March to go back to Budapest," I would be there in an instant. But am I sitting there saying, "Man, I really hope I can go to Budapest"? No. What I am hoping I can do is I really want to go to Ely, Nevada. I want to go to the middle of the desert and check it. It's a train museum. There's the darkest place on Earth, the Great Basin National Park. And of course, I love cruising the West Coast. So there's places I would love to be able to sail up to Santa Barbara. I'd love to sail to what is it in Oregon where the Goonies are that they stop for Astoria. I love wine and I love cruising the West Coast. Probably more so for the amount of stuff that you can actually do than the Caribbean. So just getting out there and doing stuff again and getting back to normal and seeing the world and seeing new ideas. And I think that's it.
Yeah, I do. I think we're going to see a lot more of people traveling close to home, camping, weekend getaways that they can drive to. And I think when cruising does resume, we're going to see it there too. I think we're going to see more drive to cruising versus getting on a plane and flying somewhere. You're just going to drive to the closest port and do whichever sailing is happening from that port, because you're just, not only does it keep you off of a flight, which is another opportunity to become ill, but it's just also, I think there's a comfort in staying closer to home. Unfortunately for me, I'm in Allentown, Pennsylvania, so there's no cruises around here. So I guess I could drive to New York, which isn't that far, but I'd probably end up having to fly anyway. Yeah, I think.
Well, how far is Allentown from Baltimore?
I want to say like 3 hours, maybe.
Oh, okay, so it still is closer. You're about an hour and a half from New York, right?
From New York, yeah, New York, Manhattan, Bayonne, Brooklyn,
Yeah.
all those.
Although I wouldn't be surprised if was it Pride that sails out of Baltimore? I wouldn't be surprised if that's on a cutting block too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for those who don't know, Carnival Corp announced that it is selling, I believe it's 6 ships.
Yeah.
But they haven't, I don't think they've announced any of them yet, have they?
I know a couple of them are for sale.
Mazda. I think Mazda is on the way out.
Yeah. Some of the older ones.
Our buddy Gene over at the Point Sky, which is, by the way, if you guys do not already subscribe to his cruise newsletter, he does an amazing job. Gene is one of the, I would say Gene's right up there with you, Ashley.
No.
People.
Gene is far more experienced than I am. He was with USA Today for, I think it was almost 30 years or something, and now he's over at the Point Sky kicking ass with their cruise coverage there. So he is like, the guru of Carolyn Spencer Brown, who's been tearing it up too with her new venture. So
he did an awesome article kind of analyzing things from the positioning of where the ships are right now to who's listing what on the cruise ship broker sites. So here, let me while you answer this question, I'm going to go see if I can pop up that article for us.
Okay. Just to back up for a second, I did find that fact regarding illness. So in 2019, a total of 911 passengers, so that's total in 2019, got sick with gastrointestinal illness on a total of 10 sailings. That's according to the CDC. So it might sound like a lot, 911 people, but it's actually only 0.003%, which is 3/1000ths of 1% of the 30 million people who cruised in 2019. So it's actually a very low number when you put it into perspective with the number of sailings that actually are constantly going, present time period accepted, of course. So I'm sorry, the question was, what am I looking forward to?
Yes. When you get back to cruising.
Just getting out. Being, it's, I think for me, so to give a little bit of background here, I worked for Cruise Critic for more than a decade. Absolutely fabulous company. But as we're seeing, the industry is being affected on many levels, including not just for people who are looking to go on vacation, but also for people who work in the industry. So I am now a cruise freelancer doing some cruise writing and now podcasting. And I think, for me, I've realized, it's made me realize how much I do enjoy cruising on a personal level, because for so long for me, it was work. And I find that for people who I don't know if you guys feel this way too, but for people who work in the industry, and when you're on board and you're covering it for, to write a story or to make sure that you're taking photos of every detail, what the carpet looks like, what color the curtains are, which side of the room the bed is on, in your cabin. When you're looking at details like that, it's hard to slow down and actually enjoy a cruise for what it is for most people. And that is a relaxing vacation where you can detach from the rest of the world and just have the cares melt away. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to experiencing it. Even though I'm still doing the freelance stuff, I will have more time to enjoy it as a vacationer versus a journalist. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to.
And writing on that, one of the things that I loved it initially because I felt like I was the king of the world. But whenever you're on board on it, even if you're not on a group trip, you have this subtle sense that people are watching you, because they are. Because when Ashley gets on whatever ship you're going to be on, or when James gets on whatever ship that he's getting on, that there's a Facebook that was distributed as far as VIPs and media guests and that kind of stuff. And you get these weird things where a guy dressed in white that you have no idea who it is stops by and's like, "Oh, are you having a wonderful time? I hope you're having a great time. If there's anything that I can do to help you, please let me know." And initially that's pretty cool. I feel special. But then, 25 feet later, when you turn the corner and there's another person dressed in white or, whatever, it's like, oh, and so it's a wonderful day, isn't it? And you're like, people are really cheerful. And you kind of realize that that's not the entirely accurate trip. I can't ever get away from that. But I think the trip that Heather and I did directly following the Encore launch, where we paid for, I think it was probably the first cruise we've actually paid for in years. It was really nice to be able to say, like, hey, you know what? This is just James and Heather, and I'm a paying guest, and we're just going to enjoy ourselves. And we still knew people, and still, I mean, I was still working. So a guy at 2:00 in the morning that's on his laptop in the Starbucks, draws attention from the crew, going like, But yeah, it for all of us that are journalists, bloggers, whatever, take some time to do a vacation by yourself, where you're not working. Because it's such a different perspective. But anyhow, I found the link for Gene's article, and so for anybody who is interested in looking at speculation on what might be the future of cruises, he has Carnival Elation, Inspiration, Empress of the Seas, Grandeur of the Seas, which actually was one of Heather and I's first cruise, and it was. Honestly, it was a terrible cruise, and I. It was a fine.
That's why I was kind of worried about cruising again, because honestly, it was not that great of a cruise. Now, I do.
And there's Your Majesty.
One thing for anybody who's never cruised on here, one of the main questions people always ask is, does the boat move? Well, yes, it does. I don't personally get seasick, but there are people that do.
I got so sick on Grandeur.
Grandeur was awful. We were going up and down like constantly, but people told me, "Oh, you'll never feel it." And so when people ask me now, I'm like, "No, you'll have times where you'll definitely feel it. It's not like if you're on a little boat in the ocean, you're on water. You're gonna feel it. You feel it less in the bigger ships. If you're on the Oasis, you really don't feel it that much, but you will feel it. And I just tell people, take stuff with you in case you do get sick.
Right.
I have the bands just in case something happens.
Yep. They also say green apples and ginger candy or ginger ale. And the best place to be is about halfway up, like, if the ship is 12 decks or whatever, you want to be on like deck 6 or 7 and midship. So not to the front, not to the back. And you want to look out a window and stare at the horizon, like the water horizon. Apparently that helps. I've never been seasick, so I don't know, but you're right, Heather. It's kind of it's sort of a gentle rocking. If you have some rougher seas, it can be a little more. It's relaxing. I've never had a better night's sleep than I've had on a ship. And the funny thing is, when the ship's rocking like that, and you're trying to walk back to your cabin after dinner or whatever, and James, you won't relate, but Heather, when you're wearing heels and you're trying to keep your balance as it is, it actually. I've joked with friends in the past that if you've had too much to drink, you'll be able to walk straight on a moving ship. If you haven't had anything to drink, you're going to be the one who's going like this down the hallway. But I find it more relaxing than anything.
Even with the cross trainers or tennis shoes, sometimes where you're kind of walking down, bouncing on from wall to wall like a ping pong. I can only imagine wearing heels. But even on a good day, I can't imagine wearing heels. You ladies. I got to give you credit for the sacrifice you make to your ankles and your and all that. But I think the other thing, if you're trying to avoid getting sick, or as far as the motion sickness, is there's certain times a year and there's certain cruise lines that are cruise destinations that are going to be easier. Like for instance, Alaska, if you sail from Vancouver, is going to be a lot better. And for the most part, if you do, I feel there's one area right around the southwestern tip of Vancouver Island that's going to be kind of rough.
They tell you to be aware of it, but I didn't feel anything when we went through it.
But once you're up into Alaska and coming down to the Inside Passage, it'll be smooth like glass for the most part. And the same way with some of the, like to go into the Bahamas, for instance, if you're going from Miami to Coco Cay or Half Moon Cay or any of those Cays, you should be totally fine. But the ship we did, what did we do? We did Mazdam from San Diego to Vancouver, and that was rough the whole way. I mean, the Pacific coast, off the coast there, is, especially that time of year, is kind of rough. So not to dissuade anybody, but I think that's one of the reasons why. I mean, clearly I'm biased because I'm married to a travel advisor, but I think that's one of the reasons why having a travel advisor is really important. Or finding a trusted media person, like you, Ashley, or like Jean, who responds to social media inquiries and say like, hey, I'm sure somebody tweeted you and said, Ashley, what do you recommend as far as a destination that's not going to be too rough? You'd be able to find them, and that's one of the things I think is really special about this industry, is that there's literally hundreds of ships and there's thousands of us, but we're all kind of a family.
It's very true. It's a big industry, but it's small. Like, everyone kind of knows everyone, and there's a lot of people willing to help if you're stuck in trying to plan a cruise and just don't know where to start.
Exactly. Now, getting back to what you said before, Ashley, you were talking about if you drank some and you're walking and stuff. Man, let me tell you, I'm not a huge drinker, but I do like to have some on the cruise ship. I will say I'm kind of craving on Norwegian. They've got the cocktails on tap, and in what's the sports bar? Do you know what I'm talking about? The pub?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the pub? Yeah, the pub.
The thing. Oh, yeah. My gosh. Whatever that is.
The local.
The local. I can't remember the drink's name, but it was so good with the little Prosecco on top, an orange that they put, and it's all on tap and mixed. It's just so good. I can go for one of those right now.
Yeah. My standard drink.
Are you talking about the beer bar? The District Brew House?
District, yes.
There's when you say the pub on a cruise ship.
Actually, I know.
Especially on Norwegian, I feel like there's a whole bunch of places, but District Brew House is one of my favorite places on Norwegian. Yeah. Probably, I would probably put it up there with Margaritaville. Although Margaritaville is being pulled off the ship because the license changed, but the District Brew House has tons of taps, and they've for beer. They've got local beer. So, like, if you're sailing in Alaska, they have Alaskan beer, and I think that's just an awesome thing that everybody should be doing.
Now, what's your favorite drink, Ashley?
I'm a beer girl, but when I sail, it's Ashley's law that I have to have at least one pina colada during the sailing. Usually it's on the first day while I'm like unpacking my stuff in my room. But yeah, that's my go-to. And everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, me too. But I'm a sucker for Carnival's Cucumber Sunrise at the Alchemy Bar. It's fabulous.
We haven't been on Carnival in a while, so I don't think I've had that. Now, I'm a sucker for the painkiller, or what is known as Red's Remedy.
that Red Frog?
It's
Remedy?
Reds, yeah.
It's not the beer. It's they just named, now they're calling it straight up painkiller because I guess the name Red's Remedy didn't stick very well. But
is that a Carnival drink though?
Yes.
Okay, well, but is Red Frog Rum Bar?
Yes, you can get it anywhere.
So do you remember back in the day when they had the welcome back party on Carnival ships, when they filled the main theater, and it was just for like 45 minutes it was just drink after drink after drink, and you cheered when the ship came on the screen. Sadly, that fell by the wayside when they started looking at ways to make money more.
Well, they still have it, but only for platinum and above.
But I think, I feel like the drinks weren't as nearly as drinkalicious as it once was. But that was our go-to for that event. But no, they do. That's a really good mass-produced drink. I'm surprised you didn't say your BBC, Heather.
Well, I do like a good BBC. You've had a BBC, haven't you, Ashley? It's a Bailey's banana colada. So it's
my God.
It's like a milkshake.
Oh my God.
It's not
that's way on my list.
Yeah, it's really good.
I like them weak. I'm pretty much a lightwait, but
it's very tasty.
I will say during this quarantine.
Jody likes your Cucumber Sunrise too.
Yes, Jody.
she is one of our cruise friends that we cruised with on our first Carnival cruise, and we've got, a good probably 20 people that we still talk to on Facebook, and we have a board that we all chat together, and we've gone on cruises again with people in the past, so it's fun. But I know we need to wrap up here. So one thing I wanted to ask is, of course, on Norwegian Bliss, when we were in Miami, we got to see fireworks from the ship because it was the inaugural and it was so beautiful. Have you ever seen fireworks from a ship out in the ocean further?
I have not cruised during the 4th of July, but I've sailed with Disney twice, and Disney on each of its sailings does a fireworks show from the top deck. So that was really neat to see, and they couple it with like a Pirates of the Caribbean themed show, and it's something. It's really
I'd
neat.
love to sail Disney sometime. That sounds really awesome. And I see videos of like those little touches that Disney does that it's Disney.
Absolutely,
like
absolutely.
Welcome the Hills family. Yay!
Yep. Yep, they announce you by name as you walk onto the gangway, and there's lines of crew just clapping for you, and they must get exhausted after welcoming thousands of people, but it is the little things. They're really, really good at that.
That's what I love about cruising too, is the people, the staff. The staff is always amazing, and you get to know them. When I did the inaugural for Panorama, we didn't go anywhere, but they just had a big bash there. One of the guys I saw walking, I knew him. I forgot his name, and he's like, "Oh," and started talking to me, and I asked him how his wife was and how his son was, because his wife is a bartender on the ship too. But they go back and forth to watch their son. So it's so much fun to meet these people because they're incredible. And
they are. They work hard, and they do.
Well.
Yes, and so much of how your cruise goes is up to them.
Yes.
So I want to just right away, Heather said about as far as tipping them. Cruise lines have played this weird game where, in fact, I wish they would just pay the people stop adding it and calling it a tip. Yeah. Don't take that off people. And every cruise that I go to, there's always people at the guest service on the last day trying to remove the tips. That's not a tip. Yeah. That is their wages. Right. Cruise lines should fix that, but they're not going to. I don't think they'd like to pretend it's a tip. But tip more. If there's a guy who every time you walk by the Sugar Cane Bar knows that you like this mojito, on the last day or even during the cruise, give him an extra $5, give him an extra $10. That $5, $10, $20 is going to go way farther in his world than it would ever go in your world. So, make sure the people who do a good job, you take care of. Make sure you take the guest services cards and give them something. I assume every cruise line is kind of the same way, but I know on Norwegian that the guest services cards lead to promotions, lead to bonuses, lead to extra time they can go ashore at a port. So money is key. Cash is king everywhere, but just treat your people right.
The thing to remember too, like I always tell people, and I get some flack for it, but I always say that if you can't afford to leave that service charge on there, you can't afford to cruise. Yep. You should factor that in as part of your cruise fare when you're budgeting. And I think what a lot of people don't realize potentially is that the service charge that is added onto your bill, it's usually a set amount per day per person. A percentage of that not only goes to your waiter in the dining room, to your room steward, but it also goes to people behind the scenes who you don't necessarily see or interact with on a regular basis. So the people who are washing your towels and your sheets, the people who are cooking your food in the galley. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to remove the service charge and just tip cash to the people that I've dealt with, my room steward and my waiter. But then you're not tipping those behind the scenes people. And that is the gratuities are a large part of their income, like James said.
And even good people. I'm not even saying. There's bad people in every industry as far as the guests, but there's a lot of good people. I didn't realize that when we first started cruising, our first 3 or 4, and actually, I've found out from a certain cruise line rumor that the PR people actually look at who takes the gratuities off, and maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but we were never being cheap. We just didn't. We just would rather reward, Juan for being an awesome waiter, or or whoever it was, and now we just leave that on, and it should not be labeled gratuity. It should just be labeled, uh, um, staff wages or
It should
something,
be.
and then
It
give the
was
guy
one of
another
our
20 bucks.
first cruises, and our table mates told us that's what they did, was they take it and then they give the money to the people that help them a lot. So they still use the money, and we're like, oh, that makes sense. And then when we really started getting into cruising, we're like, wait a second. Yeah, this is not working because we're missing tipping other people. So just tip on top. And it really, I mean, it means a lot to them because they're not making much money.
Yeah, and a lot of them, they sign contracts for it. It's the hierarchy is interesting, I guess, for lack of a different word, but sort of the waiters and the room stewards tend to sign longer contracts, so they might be on board for 9 months at a time, and then there's 6-month contracts as well, and then usually the officers and the captain will have shorter contracts, so like anywhere from I think 1 to 3 months. So these people are on board every day. They are supposed to get days off. There's some debate as to whether that actually happens, but I mean, these people are working 16-hour days or more, and they're doing it well. I mean, your waiter will know your name. He will know your drink preferences. He will know if you hate ketchup and love mustard. I mean, they really go out of their way. They will greet you. They will say hello to you. They're always very eager to hear about your day. And they really can make or break a sailing. I've never had a break, I've never had them break a cruise for me. I've always had really great experiences with the crew on every ship I've been on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we've only had one cruise where it was not the staff's fault. So it was the first cruise out of Boston on Carnival Glory a number of years ago. It was literally everything that could go wrong outside of the cruise line's power.
It was the Bostonians.
It was a Boston. So the ship was slow getting to port because of the whale migration. That's not their fault. That's the whale. Like, you don't want to kill a whale. I mean, that's I'm okay with being a few hours late to port. So the ship was late. It was the first sailing out of Boston that season. So the people at the Port Authority didn't have their shit together. So people were already pissed off by the time they got on the ship. And then a gale force winds basically closed down the harbor. So we missed Portland, Maine. And we spent the first day. And it was kind of fun because how often are you on a ship when it's like almost a hurricane outside, where you go on deck and you're sitting there, struggling against the wind. But for people like us, we were just having a ball. Other people were like, "This is ridiculous. They need to give us our money back." And it was the first time we actually had to say. Actually, that was the last time we've had an assigned table with random people because it was so bad. But here's the thing: when we switched to our own table, the staff, even though these staff were being shit on by a good percent of the people, they were friendly. They were fun. I think, to be honest, they probably enjoyed working with us because we were having a ball, and that helped them, recover some of the emotional trauma that they were being, spewed on. But yeah, the staff are amazing, and these guys really deserve everything you can do. Even if it's just a thank you, tell me about your country. Learning about, asking them and treating them like a human. There's so many ways that you can learn and grow on a cruise that people don't do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Three things just really quickly that this whole conversation has kind of brought up for me. One, Heather, you were mentioning before that I think it was on a Carnival cruise, there's a group of like 20 people that you still talk to. I think that's something important to point out about cruising, is that it is a much more social way of traveling than if you were to just go to a resort or go somewhere and stay at a hotel. Like, you're not really getting to know the person in the room next to you generally if you're at a hotel. So on a cruise, you start to see some of the same people over and over. And I think that's one of the interesting things about it. Also related to tips, just a tip about tips. If you are looking to tip crew members in cash beyond the service charge, bring cash on board with you, because the ATMs on the ship you'll get slapped with like a $10 surcharge just to withdraw money.
Plus your bank fee.
Plus your bank fee, yes. And yeah, I think
I always bring extra cash with me because of that. And not necessarily don't bring like 50s, because who's going to cash that out for you too? You should bring small bills, not only for tipping, but also at ports too, if you want to pay in cash.
Yes, I had a third thing, and it's escaped me for now. So.
Well, we would love to have you back on for the future. I'm not sure, Heather, if you're going to be doing this weekly.
I think it's hopefully the three of us can do this again next week, and we'll come up with a topic. Today we just wanted to see how everything went, how we jived, how we, went through the flow. And I have, I'd like to specifically do some where we talk with different cruise lines too. Maybe my BDM, my sales manager from Virgin Voyages, which I love. Maybe we'll have him on and we can talk about all the exciting things with Virgin Voyages. I say that because I love kids, don't get me wrong, but the fact that Virgin is 18 and up, and it's very appealing to me. I don't know about you guys, for me, it is nice.
And apparently you have a fan, Ashley, because Adam Coulter just said you were great.
Adam, thank you. Adam is the UK editor over at cruisecritic.co.uk.
Oh, nice.
Adam, you are more than welcome to join us. If you're a friend of Ashley's, you're more than welcome to join us as well sometime.
Well, I guess that's it for today. We went over a little bit. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Ashley, and thank you, James, and we will see you next Wednesday at noon Pacific. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Bye.